Welcome to NFL Daily, where we're always breaking house rules. I'm Gregg Rosenthal here in the Chris Wesseling podcast studio with my friend Patrick Claybon. And for the first time in person, yes, the host of the podcast Breaking House Rules with Cam Wolfe and Javon Holland. It's NFL Network's Cam Wolfe.
I appreciate that intro, Greg. That was well done.
I know.
Really well done.
I know, to get you on my side, just give you the plug right off the bat. You got one of those like player and reporter type pods. How's it going?
Yeah, one of the 1,000, right?
No, it's great. It's great.
It's been going great. The Dolphins season's not going great, so that's been a challenge to try to get through that on our end. But it's challenged us to like create different, deeper conversations that are just not just what happened in the game this week. You lost again. So it's been a great experience showing different sides of Javon, player, media, and we have a guy, Dre, who's a fan. So
yeah, ultimately it's the people, right?
Yes.
Besides, like, you could be a certain TV show or podcast and have a certain guest on every single week and have them say crazy stuff, and then like eventually as the team goes to 3-8, they become irrelevant. It's not fun. But if you can have a person that people can connect with,
there we go.
Wins, losses, like whatever. Like, we want to hear what you and Javon think. So.
Yeah, and I think that's what we've done the last month, and it's been fun.
Yeah, you can check that out on YouTube and obviously as a podcast too. And we're all about getting the best people here too. That's why the numbers are through the roof on Patrick Claybon Review Wednesdays. We're not gonna go any deeper though. Like you said, you have some deep conversations. No, we're sticking strictly to the surface level today. We're going all through the Week 15 games. And look, the buys are done. So this is as full a show as we have had since Week 4. And we usually go from the closest point spread to the biggest. But I decided to start differently this week because I think the structure of this week is so unique. The 5 best games this week are all 4:25 on Sunday on the East Coast. That's 4 of them. And then the Sunday night game. So we're going to start with those 5 games, starting with the 4:25. It's crazy that 4 of the biggest games for the entire rest of the season in terms of playoff percentages are all going to be at the exact same time. It is going to be Scott Hansen and football fan Nirvana around that time.
Yeah, and for those who don't have access to NFL RedZone, we do a little show, Game Day Live, on Sunday afternoon. It's okay.
That's a great plug.
It's okay. If financially everybody might not be there.
Right.
And so we provide an opportunity, which I love.
It's a great show, too.
Highlighting our afternoon opportunities, and we'll start with the game of the week. Potentially, there's two very good cases. I'm interested to see how you guys would stack these. The Buffalo Bills, coming off their loss at SoFi Stadium, going to Detroit to take on the Lions, who are favored by 2.5. The over/under 54.5. Jim, Tony, and Tracy on the call. Greg, we have seen this Bills team at their best. We have seen them play their best on offense, have a rough game against Stafford and company. How do they bounce back against an, albeit hurt, very, very good Lions team?
Great Lions team and possibly getting healthier. So Dan Campbell announced Wednesday who could be returning. And in some form or fashion, Taylor Decker is expected to return. And Aleem McNeil and Levi Onwuzurike and Josh Paschal are all expected to practice at some point this week. You would surmise that they're all going to end up playing this week. So suddenly that defensive line, which was in tatters for a couple weeks, is back to their version of full strength. They're not going to have Aiden Hutchinson back, but they got Zadarius Smith. And that's the matchup to me because the Bills, they want to bully you. They go heavy personnel more than any team in the entire league. Our friend, our co-host sometimes, Ollie Connolly, who's been in the news this week for breaking that Bill Belichick story, and it's looking like he had it ahead of all the insiders who's like, oh, he doesn't know, but we're not going to talk about that right now. He had a great article last week on his Substack about how they go heavy almost twice as much as any team in the league, and they get big passing plays from it, over 10 yards per attempt when they throw, but they just love to mash you too and run the ball with 6 offensive linemen. And so it's a great matchup to me, Cam, of a team that wants to be really tough in Buffalo and the Lions who pride themselves in being tough, and it looks like they'll be healthier to try to match up with them.
Yeah, I love this game. This is the game of the week for me. To me, people are talking about Super Bowl preview, but I think this game is a lot about the Bills. We see this Bills team every year where they're very good. We don't know if they're great. even in the description there, you were talking about the Lions being great. Bills, they don't get the great label until they do it in the playoffs, right? And so I saw how they played last week against the Rams, particularly defensively, and a lot of people brought that game up as this is why at some point they'll get got. I actually think that's a perfect bounce back opportunity for them adversity-wise, because now that they've clinched the division, there's not a lot of more obstacles for them the next month of the season. So this is a created level of adversity. I actually like Buffalo in this spot as the road dogs here. I think it's 2.5, and I'm looking at the over number. It's the highest of the week. I think there's going to be a lot of points in this game. I don't even know if that's high enough.
I agree. I think it's a mismatch when both teams have the ball on
yes,
offense.
for sure. But I am particularly eager to see Josh Allen face this Lions secondary, because they're a group that can give up some yards, but they can also make plays on the back end. And Josh Allen's deal has always been, is he going to turn over the ball? They've been really good this year for the most part. Last couple of weeks, there's been a couple of turnovers, but I think that, Kirby Joseph on that side of the ball, Brian Branch, they're going to try to entice a few plays on the interception side of things. I think the Bills have to take care of the ball to win this game, and I actually think it's going to be through Josh in the air that they win this game rather than on the ground.
It's Josh somehow, right? And I believe. In terms of the way that this defense has played this season between Brian and Carlton Davis as well as Kirby, those guys make plays.
They do.
The Bills were able to survive in a score fest across the street because the Rams secondary, we could probably count on our hands, right, the number of plays that they've been able to make this year. And so it comes down to, I think this – the issues that I talked about last week. Now, again, Puka Nacua is not playing in this game. All due respect to Arsp as well as Jamie, right? To put up the performance.
Are you the only person that calls him Ars?
I'm the only person that calls him Ars.
Because that's not catching on.
Ars is Amon-Ra St. Brown?
Arsba.
What?
ARSB. Arsb.
I'm just trying to translate for the audience out there. They might not even pick that up.
Because, you write his name so much because he's so involved in this game. Whereas they deal with a different skill set. In terms of two very good receivers, where I think that's the vulnerability. And all credit to the Bills, where they get into an AFC playoff picture where they're not going to have to play against guys like Cooper Kupp and Puka Nacua and Amon-Ra St. Brown and Jamison Williams. So those types of receiver matchups where it's not necessarily going to be a problem, it's a problem now in going up against this team. And we saw it a week ago. A similar type situation for them, unfortunately, for Buffalo.
Although you would hope, Teron Johnson on the inside, it's about as good a matchup as you could put on them. Now, their safeties, maybe they're vulnerable against the Lions. Everyone's vulnerable against the Lions when you're trying to parse out these teams. And this was my Super Bowl matchup coming into the season. And it's looking fine. It's looking good. It could happen still. I don't know if the winner of this game is going to tell me, as long as it's close and competitive, like what's going to happen in January. If the Bills lose this game, I'm not going off of them. I have a hard time picking against the Lions in any situation. But I'm kind of like you. I kind of want to pick the Bills. They do have some good things going for them. They have Dalton Kincaid and the rookie Keon Coleman back at practice. So that's really important. But they have... It's just crazy to pick against the Lions, who are one of the best teams I've ever seen, when they're getting healthier and when they're at home. So I probably won't do it in the end. And if you're just looking at small differences, the special teams for the Lions, according to Football Outsiders, or rather Aaron Schatz over at FTN Fantasy now, Lions are number 1 in the league. Bills are 29th. And then you think about the game management. You think about how it ended last week for the Bills. I don't know if I always trust Sean McDermott in those just little small margins. I trust Dan Campbell and that coaching staff and Aaron Glenn. So just the little small margins. It's hard not to just say that the Lions are a little bit better, but wouldn't surprise me at all, and I wouldn't think any worse of the Lions if they lose a close game here.
Yeah, a couple things that big picture that kind of stand out for me. I think this game's key for the Lions because of seeding, right? You got Philadelphia that's a game behind. I think the Lions would have to lose 2 technically for Philly to pass them in the 1 seed race, but I think the Lions need to play at home throughout the playoffs. I think that you see a different Lions team playing at Philly for the NFC Championship versus in Detroit. I know there's a lot made about Buffalo playing at home versus KC. Both of those places are going to be cold as heck. But Detroit in a 72-degree climate versus, with all their speed and how they make plays versus Philadelphia running the ball with Saquon Barkley at 10 degrees in a snow game, I think that's a little bit different.
And at this point, the Bills have to hope for the Chiefs to lose twice.
Yeah,
right? They've only won once so far, so it's unlikely.
I think the 1 seed's probably sailed away for the Bills in that respect. But I will say, and I mentioned this a little earlier, I talked to the Bills GM, Brandon Beane, last month about this, and he talked about the scars from last year. And he was like, the only way we're going to prep for those, get those scars past us, is how we respond successfully to adversity. And so that's why I think that, they can create their own sort of spectrum inside this game of this is our own challenge, because the reality is they clinched the AFC East, and talking to some players there this past week, they thought whether intentional or not, there was a little bit of a relax period. And maybe we saw that on defense where they relaxed. They had been a pretty good defensive team most of the year until they played the Rams. It's not like this team has been sliced and diced all year. And so I wonder if we get a different level of intensity for the Bills as they create their own, adversity they're trying to overcome.
Yeah, and an opportunity and a bounce back. They got kind of embarrassed, especially on the defensive side of the ball.
Sure.
At SoFi. Speaking of teams leading their division, what about a team that hasn't lost since week 4? Despite that, the vibes always weirdly down horrendously. That's the Philadelphia Eagles, 5.5-point favorites at home. In-state rivalry game going up against the Pittsburgh Steelers. Kevin Burkhardt, Tom Brady, Aaron Andrews, and Tom Rinaldi on the call. Cam, we have seen this Eagles team go through a lot this season. Again, only 2 losses. How do they match up against the resurgent Russell Wilson, Arthur Smith, everybody else that's having a bounce-back season in the Steel City?
So I'll say this, not just Eagles fans. This is all of Philadelphia. I lived in Philadelphia for a while. I grew up an Eagles fan. This is just...
I didn't know that.
Yeah. I'm a hardcore Phillies fan, hardcore Sixers fan. This is who we are as people. It's just never a happiness, it's always a complaint about something. And I can't imagine a sports fandom where that isn't the core of it. I can't just imagine fans that are just walking around just happy. We won this.
You kind of live in one now, Miami. They're not that happy either because of their team, but that's why you moved there, though. Just better vibes. Right?
I can't even imagine that. I think Philadelphia, you win by 20 points. Why didn't we win by 30? You win this past game. Why isn't A.J. Brown getting the ball enough? And I get it. They played a Panthers team that, record-wise is one of the worst in the league. They're also playing very well right now with Bryce Young. And sometimes you have to gut through those games. I think the type of style that Philly has chose to play after the bye has enticed some of this. They've chosen the route of the best way for us to win is to lean on Saquon Barkley, minimize Jalen Hurts' turnovers. And because of that, you're going to have games where you just do not throw the ball enough. Jalen Hurts has shown he is not going to be a 70-75% completion quarterback. And so if you minimize your pass attempts to 20 to 25 attempts,
right,
you're going to lessen the chances you're getting the ball to AJ and Devontae. I think just like everything, we're going to get a squeaky wheel week. I think that because of all the talk of AJ and coaches say they don't buy into this stuff, this was loud enough, especially when you got Brandon Graham coming in talking about, even though he took it back, they used to be friends.
He didn't take it that far back, actually. I thought when I finally listened to him take it back, and he did a couple appearances, that made me think, okay, this is a real thing. Yeah. And real things happen. They're human beings, like relationships, whatever it is. His take back was so light, he kind of wasn't really taking it back. So I was like, okay, there's something going on.
It's clearly it's something. It's not just a made-up media sensation. Now, how high of a level of importance it is, who knows? This doesn't feel like Donovan McNabb and T.O. doing push-ups in the parking lot with media.
That beef is still hot, by the way. T.O. was tweeting this week.
Wait, really?
Yes.
That's amazing.
So I don't think it's that level, but I do think there is something to the fact of Jalen is naturally a quieter internal dude, and A.J. is a very outward guy. And so those personalities sometimes, you just receive things differently. And I think that for Jalen, everything's about winning. AJ, I'm sure as well. But AJ wants his stats for the whole crew. And one thing that I don't think is talked about enough, Devontae Smith did an interview at his locker after that game too, and he also was not happy with the passing game either. So this isn't an AJ Brown thing. It's the receivers are not getting the rock. Are we okay with winning this way?
No, because I don't think you think it's good enough. I assume Jalen Hurts is not happy with the passing game.
No.
I assume Nick Sirianni's not happy with the passing game. Their passing game is declining. If you look at their efficiency numbers, it's worse than it was last year overall, and it's significantly worse over the last 4 or 5 weeks than it was the first 7 or 8. So I think there are opportunities that when they're in the meeting rooms where A.J. Brown and Devontae Smith say, throw the ball.
Yeah.
And he's not throwing the ball. Yeah. And so I think that's their biggest issue. And that is something that I don't know if it's, I'm not smart enough to know if it's what defenses are doing to them. They did a good job last week, Carolina, kind of taking away the RPOs, and he made some bad decisions on the RPOs, and then he's just holding on to the ball. And the numbers show when he is holding on to the ball, it's not going well.
Right. And that's always been a Jalen Hurts thing. He's always on the ball a lot. I think one question I would ask both of you guys, early in the season, the issue with him was turnovers, but they were throwing the ball at a higher level. Do you
I buy your theory.
That back? I think some of the thing as a quarterback, you get told not to turn the ball over, you're going to miss open receivers because of hesitancy. And when I watch them on film, there's throws that I think he misses because he's a little hesitant to fire it in if it's close. And so do you want that fire back, or do you say we're winning without you turning the ball over, we'll deal with the overall decline?
I think you have to try to hit the ceiling of what the football team can be. And part of that ceiling is going to be turning the ball over. You're throwing the ball, bad things can happen. But we've seen Jalen make plays throughout his career. He's not the type of quarterback that you have to hide. Right now, he's hiding himself and turtling up and taking sacks. And I can see where that's the frustration, where AJ and Devontae are watching Xavier Legette drop a touchdown that could have beat them. They feel like they left points on the field that they could have gotten. And the reason that I'm confident in the Philadelphia Eagles is because they can make those plays. And I am banking on explosive plays from this Eagles team that we have seen, especially from number 26, who can make an explosive play anytime, versus the Pittsburgh Steelers, who are on a great run. But I feel significantly different about this team if there's no George Pickens.
And he's doubtful. He's basically not playing.
Doubtful from Mike Tomlin, pre-Wednesday. Mike Tomlin's going ahead and making it out there we might not have George for a while.
Yeah, well, the hamstring injury, I guess that he aggravated but really suffered the injury was at practice Friday. So it's not even a week old. There's a couple trends in this game that worries you about Pittsburgh. They're all about the turnover differential, so maybe this game is the game where you're like, okay, Jalen, keep playing like that. Because they're plus 75 in terms of points on turnover differential, in terms of scoring off turnovers versus giving up. And they're also minus 27 points in the first quarter. They are very slow. It's one of the things that, as someone who's seen Russell Wilson struggle, and I cop to digging dirt on his grave a little too early on our last show, so I won't repeat all of that. But one of the things that I see, too, is you still have those halves where there's no production. They had 7 possessions in the first half of that game. It took to their 8th possession where they really started moving the ball. Sometimes you won't have that time. And so, like I said, they're really slow starters. Can you do that against an Eagles team that is so good at being front runners? And they've been slow starters, too. So I guess maybe they can cancel each other out. But when the Philly has the ball, it's best on best. That O-line versus that defensive front, and they got so many pass rushers they can't even play him. Oh, I need more Nick Herbig in my life. He kind of went back to the bench, and he was one of the best pass rushers in the league. So you got to find a way to get him on the field even more. But it's because they have 5 good pass rushers. So what a great matchup that is. I mean, you got not just the Eagles and the Steelers going against each other. You got Tom Brady and Burkhardt going against Nance and Romo at the same time. That's the game within the game.
Yeah.
What a war.
I think I might, I don't know, 5.5 is a lot.
Yeah. It is a lot.
Steelers.
It is a lot.
Significant amount of points for a team that's been squeezing by.
And like you mentioned, it's probably going to be 3-3 at halftime, given these offenses need an hour and a half to wake up,
So we're going to keep things waking up. Nobody's having any issues waking up because the afternoon, this is not your nap time on Sunday. Once again, reiterating that because we have 2 teams in the thick of playoff hunts, one in the NFC, one in the AFC, Greg. It is early season MVP candidate Baker Mayfield.
Oh, man.
And the Tampa Bay Buccaneers at the Chargers, who are 2.5-point favorites. Adam Amin, Mark Sanchez, and Christina Pink on the call. We saw the Chargers lose yet another heartbreaker, probably one of the most heartbreakers in this run of losses to the Chiefs this season.
There's a lot of them.
How do they bounce back, and do they get the win and stay in this wild card hunt?
I thought you were saying like heartbreakers in the Chargers-Chiefs rivalry, because my God, if you watch the end of those games since Herbert got there, it is crazy how they all end something like this. This game is so fascinating because these two teams are kind of the AFC, NFC equivalents of each other. They're really uneven. The Chargers, like, they got the quarterback and they got the defense, but the offense just not consistent, not explosive enough. The Bucs, they got the offense, they got the play caller, but they don't really have the defense right now. They don't really have the quarterback right now either. If you could switch a couple of the little pieces here, like you put Herbert on the Bucs,
create your own fantasy.
you might be going to Super Bowl or something. Like, you give the Chargers defense to the Bucs, you might be going to the Super Bowl. But Baker, and this is where I don't know if you're lucky. I don't want, if I don't see the Bucs game as closely on Sunday and then see it later in the week, because I'm going to bring the fire now. He's falling apart a little bit right now. Like, last 4 games, 5 touchdowns, 4 interceptions, 8 fumbles. I do not think he played well in that last game, and it's been against some bad competition. So it's kind of been the bad Baker under the radar because they've mostly been winning. They've been 1-3 in a row, but you can't do that against the Chargers, or this game won't be close. The Chargers will win it.
Yeah, it's interesting with Tampa Bay because they may win the NFC South just by default, but I don't think they're playing at anywhere near the level that they were playing at last season. And I know they had some injuries to receivers mid-season, but it just felt like whenever that happened, the chemistry of the team just kind of shifted. To me, I think the health of Bucky Irving is going to be a big factor in this game. He's been really a big core of their offense. I know they have Rashad White and Sean Tucker as well, but when he went out last game, you definitely felt a difference in there. I know he's been dealing with the kind of the core injuries, and they said he may be okay to play through it. But to me, he brings a level of intensity, a level of attitude they need for that offense to have success against the Chargers.
Yeah, the injury status for a couple of rookies in this game, Bucky Irving for the Buccaneers, and Ladd McConkey being there, the Chargers beat the Chiefs, in my opinion. If he's able to play consistently in that game, you're having to rely on Josh Palmer and Quentin Johnston so much. And it was a different Bucs team. Like, the resurgence of Bucky Irving was kind of what rescued this offense.
Yeah.
When Baker had things started to go wrong late in this season. And so it makes it a very difficult pick. But, Greg, we do return back to that legendary Thursday Night Football game where Baker Mayfield saved his career. It was there in SoFi Stadium.
Oh, good vibes.
He's
good
back
vibes
in the friendly confines. If this is an opportunity for Baker to stick it to you,
he's not sticking it to me either, because I think Liam Cohen is doing a great job cooking up this offense. They start really fast, so he'll have stretches of games, and when it comes down to the end of games, I keep repeating myself, but it happened again last week. Granted, it was against the Raiders. He's played very well in the last 7-8 minutes of games, and that's what you want. I gave Geno Smith a lot of love for doing that, and Baker Mayfield is doing that too. I just worry about the Bucs defense. They don't have Antoine Winfield in this game. Their back 7 has been thin. The pass rush that they're getting is from unblocked, blitzers, which they're great at doing that. Last week it was Levante David had a bunch of quick pressures. Can you do that against the Chargers? Maybe you can. This offensive line has been struggling a little bit lately. I think they need to run the ball more consistently. They got it going a little bit in the second half of that game, so maybe there's something there, because it just doesn't make sense to me that this Greg Roman team that put all this investment in the offensive line is not able to run the ball. I think to get to where they want to go, like winning this game, this is a huge swing game for these two teams. Yeah. If the Bucs win this game, their schedule is quite easy. They are really in great position to win the division. And if the Chargers win this game, they're almost locked into a wild card. So it's a big-time bonus for whoever wins this game.
Yeah, and I think what you're talking about with the Bucs struggles, I mean, it's not a great week for them to get right. The Chargers defense, I don't think there's been a defense in the league that's had a better turnaround year to year than the Chargers have had this year. They're first in the league in scoring defense, and they just play with a level of continuity that it's hard to consistently beat them. And you really need elite quarterback play. Baker has not played elite recently. I think this is definitely an opportunity for the Chargers to flex a little bit.
Let's go.
And show their stuff.
Against the Buccaneers defense that's given the second highest rate of wide open receivers this year, 29.7% of dropbacks. Somebody's running down the field by themselves against this Bucs defense. We'll see if Gregg Roman can scheme guys open against the Tampa Bay Buccaneers.
Oh, come on.
Old beefs never die, Greg. Shout out to T.O. as well. Let's go to a game that's impossible, Greg, for me to pick. It is the Indianapolis Colts at the Denver Broncos, who are a 4-point favorite. Spiro Dedes, Adam Archuleta, and Aditi Kinkhabwala on the call. It has been very difficult to look at this game, Greg, and think about Gus Bradley's defense going up against Sean Payton and Bo Nix, one of the best zone passers in situations in the league. And then my love for Anthony Richardson. I need both of you to help me decide how to look at this game.
I'm with you. I'm having a hard time with it because I got the Bo Nix army in my mentions because I did not have him in my top 5 rookie of the year ballot. And
that's a mistake by you.
Oh boy. The Denver fans, they're spicy right now, and I'm not going to go through all those reasons. So in my heart, like, it'd be nice to give him some humble pie here, but coming off a bye week, Gus Bradley versus Sean Payton. Now, on the flip side, you could say the same thing, that the Colts have a bye week, but that to me is a mismatch. I actually don't think these two teams have been that close over the course of the season. I think the Broncos have been a consistently really good team, and so I'm going to pick them even though I don't want it to happen.
Yeah, I actually don't think this is that hard of a pick. I think the Broncos blew out the Colts.
Ooh.
And it hurts me to say this as a fellow Anthony Richardson believer. I'm a big believer in Anthony Richardson. I believe he should not have got benched earlier in the season. And he is developing to the level that I think he will eventually be. I just think this Colts team is not ready. And I'm thinking less of Anthony Richardson, but more the team around him to be able to compete here. They've last 6 games, they're 2-4, and their 2 wins have come by 1 point to the Patriots and to the Jets, 2 of the worst teams in football. And so this is not a team that's been punching with contenders over the last few weeks. And the Broncos, I know we talk a lot about Bo Nix, but to me, I know last week withstanding, their defense has been incredibly impressive this year. Jameis Winston went off on them. The Jameis Winston, somebody's going to catch the ball game for sure. But I think Vance Joseph has done an incredible job for most of the year, having them be aggressive but also consistent. I was at a game last year with the Broncos where they gave up 70 points to the Dolphins. And everybody called for them to fire the defensive coordinator. They're in the top 3 in points per game allowed, next-gen stat pressure rate, sacks, all the categories that tend to lead to wins. And I think they win this game. And not only that, and I talked about this on GMFB this morning, my hot take is if the Broncos get into the playoffs, which I think they do, and if they get the right matchup, which is a team we just mentioned earlier, I think they pull an upset.
Well, who's the team we mentioned earlier? Buffalo or Pittsburgh?
Pittsburgh.
Okay.
Yeah,
I mean, they pull a first round upset.
That is intriguing. Wait, so you were on Good Morning Football this morning, peek behind the curtain. We're in the early afternoon here in Los Angeles. So what time were you in the facility?
Yeah, so I got up here probably around 5:05.
Okay.
I think I walked up.
We're putting you to work.
Yeah, I had a late night flight. Got in about midnight.
My God.
Got back to the hotel about 1:15. Got 3 hours of sleep and ready and rolling.
That's Philly right there.
That's what it is. You just do the work. You don't complain. You don't.
Unless it's related to a sports team.
Yes.
In which case, no matter how good the work is.
Yeah, you complain.
Yes. That's because our lives are so much of grit and work that we expect that level of focus and intensity for our teams. And so, the Eagles, we need more.
The reason it's difficult is the level of focus and intensity that I've seen late in these 2 wins on the road by this Indianapolis Colts team, where Anthony Richardson was getting sold late. There were guys like Kylan Granson had a drop on the final drive. And really, I'm with you, Cam, on the way that this offense is constructed, where you got a couple tight ends and Granson and Mo Alley Cox, and all the shots are deep down the field, and like the personnel doesn't necessarily match up. Like Alec Pierce and Josh Downs, like perfect for this offense, but then there's some other aspects.
And Downs might not play this game.
Yeah, and it's just, but to see Anthony Richardson late in that game put the team on his back and play that way, it's it's almost that inspiring sense of the way I felt about Matthew Stafford against the Bills, where they have a puncher's chance when you have a guy that can do things that not a lot of people can do. And that's why it makes it difficult, because I can't unsee Jerry Jeudy running down the field by himself. It's very difficult for me to unsee that because it happened multiple times.
Well, one of the big reasons that happened was because Riley Moss was out, and it sounds like Riley Moss could be out not just this week, but a few weeks longer, that it was a little more serious an injury. And that's a big problem for them just because they had two really good corners. Yeah. And when you have a all-pro corner in Surtain, you need that second spot to be solid, and Moss was that guy, and now he's not there, so that's vulnerable for them.
Yeah. One quick thing, Patrick, on Anthony Richardson. I think you hit it on the nose, and it's less related to this game and more about his development. It was upsetting just to kind of see how all the talk on him was focused about him not being ready. Yeah. You mentioned it. The offense is not ready for him. Mm-hmm. He creates a level of energy that they feed off. I talked to Mo Alley Cox earlier this year, and he was talking about how the losing streak where Anthony Richardson was gone, the energy felt sapped out of the building. So Richardson brings that. He was like, you can say what you want about, where he is and, how much work he needs to put in or develop. The energy, we're a young team, we need that. And this is a team that I just think is a year away from being ready. And I think Richardson got the brunt of it when honestly it's on the rest of the team and not him.
Okay, but this is an opportunity. Shane Steichen's been in that building with his guy. Yep. His guy is Anthony Richardson for a year and a half. They had to reset it this year. They're coming off a bye week. It's a little bit of a coach off. Steichen, we gave Steichen a lot of love. I do give him a lot of love. And so come up with a game plan. Mm-hmm. You've been using Richardson with a lot more design runs since he came back in the lineup. It's off the charts, actually. It's like 8, 9, 10 a game. It's a lot. Maybe they'll lean into that even more. His numbers throwing the ball short are much better. And then on the other side, like you gave all this money and you drafted Latu in the defensive line. Not a lot of teams have been able to pressure Nix this season, but his numbers versus pressure, it's one of the reasons I didn't have him on my Rookie of the Year list. They're bad. They're all in the bottom, they're not in the top 30. All his numbers against pressure are bad, so you got the horses. No excuses, I think, for the Colts. I think this is an opportunity. If you deserve to make the playoffs, you can go win this game. Cam and I both doubt it, but if you want to make a pick with your heart, I don't think it's that crazy, Patrick.
No, it is. Plenty of evidence to say that my picks with my heart are great.
Yes, tune into Game Day View on NFL Network with me and Patrick, especially the standing section right at the beginning. We're going to take a quick break, and we're going to get to the primetime game. I'm really excited about this one. That's kind of the last of our 5-pack of great games to start this schedule. Back on NFL Daily with the hardest working man in showbiz, Cam Wolfe. But he doesn't work harder than Geno Smith. Geno's in the building, just grinding tape, trying to prove us right, along with Jordan Love, for keeping him on quarterback island. Those two were probably the two last guys on. They both played excellent football last week and made us look smart.
Yeah, great quarterback matchup, which is why it's time for Hot Matchups, presented by Wingstop. The Green Bay Packers at the Seattle Seahawks at over-under 45.5. It's Sunday Night Football, so that means Mike, Chris, and Melissa on the call. Carrie Underwood in the pregame. We saw the Finns go up, Cam, to Seattle. It was one of those without Tua games. We'll just forget about all that. But since this early part of the late season, if that's the way to describe it, both the Packers and the Seahawks have been really good. How do you view this matchup between, again, two very good quarterbacks?
So I know we have the Geno love, but I love the Packers.
Okay.
I love the Packers. I saw them on Thanksgiving against those Finns that also had an embarrassing showing on Thanksgiving. I just think they have a level of toughness that I don't know that I fully appreciated in this Matt LaFleur team before seeing them up close. I think, we talk about them and they're the youngest team in the league and they have a lot of, Jordan Love with the bevy of playmakers and Jaden Reed and Christian Watson, all the playmakers downfield. But when they really needed to lean on Josh Jacobs and establish this physicality, that's when I think they're at their best. And when you look at this Packers team, they've lost twice since September, both times to the Lions. If you don't play the Lions, the Packers are in really good shape. And, maybe that cost them at some point in the playoffs, but I just think they are in my opinion, one of the 3 or 4 best teams in the NFC. To me, they're right up there. It's them, Minnesota, Philly, and Detroit. And I think that's your group. That's your 4. And I think Seattle's just on the outside. I've got too much inconsistency from Seattle for it to, transfer over. And so home game for Seattle. They certainly got the 12th man there. Geno's going to be Geno. But I like this Packers defense. I like their run game to come in there and make some noise.
Yeah, that makes sense to me. And yet they're catching the Seahawks at the wrong time. 4 straight wins for them. The offensive line for the Seahawks has started to play well. Or much better, I should say. Like, all I've wanted watching Geno every week is just give him a passable offensive line. They had their center retire, Connor Williams, and the kid that replaced him has played pretty well. And then they get their right tackle back, Abe Lucas. You get better players. You just settle down. They've been solid, and then they started to run block pretty well last week. And you think this matchup against the Packers, I look at who's going to get more pressure on the opposing quarterback. Usually that's Seattle's opponent, but the way Seattle's pass protection has been lately, and Green Bay's pass rush is pretty vanilla. It's not consistent, and Seattle, on the other hand, has got 5 different guys who have a 10% pressure rate plus. I think there's only 2 teams in the league with that many different guys. They're hitting the blitzes. Jordan Love struggled sometimes with blitzes. So if Seattle is a team that gets more pressure than Green Bay, Seattle's definitely got a shot.
Yeah, Packers 4th lowest pressure rate in the league, and so they do not get consistent pressure on the quarterback. I think that the Seahawks consistency is my issue, but I also like their spurts. Jackson Smith-Njigba, when he's on, has been a top 10 receiver in football this year at his peak. They've had massive games out of him, and I like that they've shifted the offense a little bit more to focus on him as the primary. I think it was maybe a year or 2 late. I think we could have got this last year, but you got to respect your Tyler Lockett and
he might have not been ready either. It's tough out here for the rookie receivers.
I understand that, but I think the motion element for Jackson Smith-Njigba has really helped this offense, because when you look at Seattle, his motion creates so much attention change to what they do defensively, and I think it opens up lanes for whether it's Kenneth Walker or Zach Charbonnet, but also the other receivers, and DK in particular. I think he's in the top 7 in motion routes, and so that kind of just shows how much they use him as a focal point, kind of like how the 49ers will do with Debo, or the Miami will do with Tyreek Hill. He becomes that guy that gets everybody's eyes, and I think that's definitely their difference maker in this matchup. Can they get Jackson Smith-Njigba to create more chaos in the Packers defense than Xavier McKinney does and those guys with their playmaking ability?
Yeah, the Packers, one of my picks to go to the Super Bowl at the start of the season.
Right.
And I still feel solid about this team, but the defense has been consistently mid. Right, especially in terms of rushing the passer, where you flip the script, and we've seen the bad Seattle Seahawks defense in these past few weeks. We've seen a very, very solid Seattle Seahawks defense that's been consistent. We've seen a Seahawks offense that was making, frankly, hilarious mistakes, big losses on bad snaps, turnovers in the red zone, and now they've been an exceedingly safe and reliable and responsible offense during this run where they get them at home.
Yeah.
And a home underdog. I can't help but feel good about Geno on the squad.
Oh, so we might be parking our car in the same garage here. Yeah, I mean, I think I want this to happen, and it's close enough that I'll probably take it. But I do think there are real reasons to believe in it. You mentioned JSN. He has the most yards in the slot in the NFL by far this year. I really like the Charbonnet backfield, and so even if Kenneth Walker is back, and it's not looking
still day to day.
Yeah, it's definitely not likely, at least as we tape this. I think he'll be a bigger part of that. The one thing I would worry about more than anything from a Seattle perspective is, okay, it's a real test for their run defense going up against Josh Jacobs and this group, who their offensive line, I saw from Next Gen Stats, had the second most amount of snaps together as a 5-pack, and they just throw every scheme at you. So they've been playing well, stopping the run, but they were a team that really struggled early in the season. They missed a lot of tackles over and over. And I know they changed their linebackers out and stuff, but the Packers will really test you, and that I think is one concern.
But it's the system stopper. That's why Mike Mack is there.
That's true.
And this is the system.
That's true. He's the Shanahan tree stopper. Let's go, Mike Mack.
Gregg's definitely taking Seattle. And let's go. Gotta go back to Cam here. We'll go I got my arrows mixed up, and I don't want to end up. I teed up Cam on a Geno Smith game. I should have teed up Greg on that. So let's
all
go
good.
Dolphins.
I mean, it's all good.
It's all good. It's all good.
The Miami Dolphins, Cam.
Yeah.
On the road, still in the hunt, still in this playoff picture. They get the overtime win. Late Tyreek scores on a 4th down. They get the 2-point conversion. They get the Jonnu Smith walk-off touchdown. Right back at it the very next week against the Houston Texans, who didn't have an overtime game. They didn't have a game at all. They're 2.5-point favorites. The over-under is 47. Kevin Harlan, Trent Green, Melanie Collins on the call. Can the Fins do this?
They can. But ultimately, it may not be enough. I think we've talked about this Dolphins team a lot, in the post-Tua spectrum. They play really great ball. Tua leads the NFL in completion percentage, passing yards. But there just has felt something missing with this Dolphins team all year. And once you start to believe with them, I call it hopium. It's a dangerous drug. Once you start to believe that there's a chance, you get burnt. And that was the Green Bay game for a lot of folks. You finally think, it's time for them to finally prove wrong, that they could play in cold weather and in prime time again. And then they lay an egg. And then they beat the Jets, and it's like, well, they beat the Jets, so can we – and whether they win this game or not, I just don't think they have enough as a team this year. I will say what's so interesting about this upshoot of Tua through this last portion of the year is that we're seeing a different evolution of a Mike McDaniel offense. They for a long time been, even though we talked about Tyreek and Waddle, they had their run game as a pillar. They've really struggled to run the ball for the last month or two. They've been 2-3 yards per carry, and they've essentially abandoned it as the core of their offense. And that's why you're seeing Tua throw 47 times like he did against the Jets. Didn't get hit one time because, as the Jets defender told me last week, he had never seen a quarterback where every single time his third foot hit the back, the ball was out. It's literally like a science, his timing. That's his superpower. People want to know what Tua's superpower is. It's timing, it's anticipation. They're special in that area, but they have a lot of question marks on defense. And if we get the right level of the Texans, I think they can expose some of their flaws on defense.
Well, these two teams, I think, are similar in some ways that something's been missing. The Texans are barely favored in this game, even though they're at home and they have the better record, because they were so disappointing on offense going into their bye. Last time we saw them, the Titans beat them a couple games before the bye, and then they're scraping out a win where Mac Jones has a couple fourth-quarter touchdowns on them the next week after that. And I wonder if Bobby Slowick and this Texans offensive staff and CJ can come up with answers during the bye week. That's always the hope, that you can come back looking a little better, because they have not been able to run the ball. He hasn't been consistent, CJ Stroud, in terms of his confidence in letting go of the ball sometimes. And he'll have a lot of great throws. He did in that Jaguars games, but then he'll have a lot of curious plays that you didn't really see as a rookie. So this Dolphins defense hasn't been great by any means. Probably the best, most consistent units in this game will be going up against each other. It's a great matchup when the Texans defense, which is one of the best in the league, and hopefully he's a little healthier here, goes up against Tua. And so it's weakness on weakness and strength on strength in this game.
I was glad to see Chop Robinson come back in the game against the Jets, because when they initially drafted him, right, Chop was coming in as this high upside guy, which you didn't necessarily know what the floor was, but then they have the injuries on edge, and they need him to produce, and Chop has produced.
Yeah.
He's played pretty well. And then over on this Texans pass rush, where they have one of the lowest time to throws in the entire NFL. Now, does that help you against the Miami Dolphins? Like the way that this pass rush works in league with the coverage, if Tua's getting rid of the ball as quickly as he normally does that kind of take away one of the biggest strengths on this side of the ball, where that's where the Texans have the advantage.
Yeah.
In terms of health, they get some guys back on that defense this week. So it's
maybe Christian Harris,
right.
Probably not Jalen Petrie. I'm looking for the update.
Yeah, it's still, so we have to wait on a big part of their secondary. But I just, when Tua is on, right, and late, it's such a key difference.
Yeah. Where
I felt like on that 4th down call against the Jets, where the things that didn't work on the goal line stand on Thanksgiving against the Packers, where they still had a chance to make it that game. It's like Alec Ingold's in, and they're going heavy, and it's just like At a certain point, you just have to be who you are.
Mm-hmm.
Let's spread the ball around and let the quarterback who gets rid of the ball quickly do just that to fast people.
It's just such a small margin that they're threading, and they are threading it, but it's like they don't really throw the ball deep.
Mm-hmm.
They can't run the ball. They're bad in short yardage, and yet they're one of the better offenses in the league because they're that good at the thing that they do, which is throw it with timing. But you got to be great on third downs, and they were all season. Tua was like Patrick Mahomes God mode, but last week they weren't, and that's why you almost, gave up a loss to the Jets or whatever. So it's a hard way to live. They could do it though because they have.
It's a great point there. I'm curious to see what scheme D'Amico puts out for this game against them, because you mentioned it. Teams have played in an immense amount of cover too high against them, with the idea of taking away Tyreek and Waddle, almost to the point that I think the Dolphins have permanently changed or at least for this season, changed their offense to where they don't even try deep. It's a very much funnel offense where it's a lot of screens, a lot of check downs, and they didn't used to be this. And so it makes me wonder, is this gone completely, or is it based off of just the adjustment of how defenses play them? If the Texans are willing to play a little bit closer to the line of scrimmage and jump these passes, I wonder if they can have their way. It's a big risk with Tyreek and Waddle on that side of the field.
I don't know if they have the dudes.
But it's something that I think would be intriguing, especially for the pass rush element. One thing to watch, Teron Armstead has been dealing with a knee injury. It's going to be tough for him to go this week.
Oh, that's a big one.
He came out after about one drive last week. You could see him get a little emotional during the game.
Yeah.
I talked to him in the locker room. He's dealing with something that's a little bit more serious than he probably should be playing through. But this is a guy who it may or may not be his last year. And I think he takes a lot of pride in this stuff. They got Patrick Paul, who they drafted in the second round, who stepped in left tackle and played pretty decent. And with Tua's timing, maybe you can get away with it, but that could be an area that Danielle Hunter and that defense can particularly expose. So pass rush on both sides is something I want to see. I love your mention, Patrick Chop Robinson, 31 pressures since week 8 for him, top 5 in the NFL. So a guy who people wondered is too small, is he a bust? Just give him time. He's come along, and so pass rush I think is going to be a big factor.
It's a huge game for both teams because Miami, this could be how their season ends. But if you can get the win, they're 7-7, and they play three losing teams down the stretch. One of them's the 49ers, which is a good losing team, but still.
There's a path.
There is a path. So, and the Texans, on the flip side, they literally can win the AFC South this week. They can clinch it this week if the Colts lose and they win, but if you just flip those scenarios, then suddenly the Colts are only one game back, and so a lot will be decided in this one.
So AFC and NFC North, AFC and NFC South are both divisions. So somebody's going to win it by default. One fun story on the Dolphins' playoff chances. I was talking to Calais Campbell in the locker room after this game, and he's talking about the game and whatnot, and he's just like, "But Cam, every time we need somebody to lose, they don't lose. Whether it's the Broncos, the Colts. Can you tell them to lose?" And I don't really have that power, Calais, or would they listen to me? But yeah, Miami needs a lot of help from the Broncos and other teams, but they can help themselves by just handling business. And this is a game that I think they can win. With their talent, they probably should win with the Texans' inconsistency.
A player asking you to have another team lose makes me think of when people ask us for Super Bowl tickets.
Yeah,
as if we possess that particular power. From one team that's very hopeful, maybe hanging on to some playoff hopium, to a team that's definitely hanging on to some playoff hopium. The Cincinnati Bengals, Greg, fresh off of their somehow victory on Monday Night Football against the Dallas Cowboys, taking on the Tennessee Titans. The over-under 46.5, Kevin Kugler, Moose Johnston, and Laura Oakman on the call, where Tennessee played in a dreadful game a week ago. Can they get back up and take on this really special connection between Joe Burrow and Jamar Chase? No,
probably not. They're one of those teams that, like, if you look at the numbers, sometimes you hear the announcers say, like, they have the number one pass defense, and it's just they're not effective stopping the pass. It's just teams don't even need to pass against them, so the yardage is low because they're always ahead of them. Yeah. So they're going to be able to pass against them, and maybe it is hopium, but they got the Titans. And then they got the Browns next week. I know that's a division game that they've had some trouble with.
You're selling Bengals fans some hope.
No, I'm just saying when they're 7-8.
Yeah.
If they're 7-8, they will be alive, very likely, and we're going to be entering Week 17, and we're going to be talking about the scenarios of like, the Bengals aren't totally out of it yet. That's a path that I do see happening.
For sure. For sure. This has been one of the most befuddling, wasted seasons that I can remember with Joe Burrow and Jamar Chase. Like, this is the best season Joe Burrow's had as a pro. This may be the best season Jamar Chase has had when he's been healthy as a pro, right? And they're 5-8. And it's interesting because just a couple of years ago, Lou Anarumo was getting the head coach love. I think he's a really good defensive mind. This year, for whatever reason, it just has not worked. I was watching the game, and it was so funny because he's almost like throwing his hands up, like, I'm going to try whatever. I don't have a lot of confidence in what working. Like, they went back to playing a lot of single high this past week, and it still didn't work. Like, it doesn't matter if they're playing heavy zone, if they're blitzing or not blitzing. They're just getting beat.
I don't think they're talented.
That's it. It's Trey Hendrickson, and a bunch of guys.
Yeah.
You know, with all due respect, they have talent because they're NFL players, but in respect to the rest of the league, like maybe 2 or 3 guys on that team will start on another play.
And some of them are hanging on from the previous time, so you think they're good. Hubbard got a good contract, but he's not playing like a good player. Jermaine Pratt has been there for a long time, but he's not playing well.
Yeah.
Like
Cam Taylor-Britt, same way. He had
the rookie, the DBs that they drafted. Because I think we love to put it all on coordinators. We probably give him too much credit. Mm-hmm. Like, his players were way better in 2021. Those players deserve the credit, and now they're not that good.
Yeah, it's ultimately where I can't think of a team that we have seen have so much success with the same guys, where whether it's they all get hurt but they're still playing, did they all get old at the same time? Like, it was a sad experience to see Mike Hilton matched up with CeeDee Lamb on the goal line and get absolutely diced up to the point where CD's open by 6 or 7 yards. They were only on the 9-yard line in the first place. And Cooper Rush throwing from the shotgun. So there's just, you've seen the defense fall off, but with what the offense is doing, like, it's going to matter against a whole lot of teams.
Even Chase Brown's getting it done. Chase Brown's had a nice little bump in his career. We haven't mentioned him much on the show. He is playing really well. He's a good player. One just really small note on the Titans, which I just hadn't mentioned, was Treylon Burks went to IR last week. It did not come up on NFL Daily. It's just disappointing. First-round pick from a couple years ago. Only ended up having 5 catches this year and probably moving on after this year. Just kind of one that did not work out for them, unfortunately.
Yeah.
Rough situation.
Yeah, I still remember the Mike Vrabel video as he gets up as they trade A.J. Brown. And, you can tell he's not happy. He just gets up. And you knew he was right then, but, just for the
you can trace their 3-10 record and everything that's happened since to that moment. Yes. I really believe that.
For sure. Because you lose the spirit of a team sometimes too.
And it broke up the front office coach. It just led to a bunch of that was it. That was a franchise changing mistake.
People saw the Stephon Diggs trade, and they draft one of the best receivers in the NFL, in Justin Jefferson. That's not a duplicate. You can't duplicate that.
Let's go get a Justin Jefferson.
Yeah, right? It's very simple. Kill the Batman. Let's go to the Washington Commanders, back off of the bye, 7.5-point favorites against whomever will start at quarterback for the New Orleans Saints, as we watch to see if it's Spencer Rattler or if it's the other option,
Jake Haener.
Yeah.
I think it's going to be Jake Haener. But we don't know as of this tape.
Yeah, still waiting for some confirmation there. Kenny Albert, Jonathan Vilma, Megan O'Leary on the call. The question is, does it matter, Cam? Who starts?
No.
For the Saints here?
It doesn't. It doesn't matter at all. The Saints are one of those teams where, look, Darren Rizzi's been coaching his butt off, but at some point you just lose enough bullets where you wonder what level of fight you start to have. And I'm interested in what we see from Washington coming off this bye week because, I have the understanding that Jaden Daniels was battling through a little bit more than even maybe his coach was letting on as far as what was limiting him.
That's why I like having Cam here in the studio. So, he's got that inside scoop.
I'm just saying, don't always listen to what your head coaches say in press conferences. Some of that's protecting your guy, but time, rest will help a quarterback. And last week we saw him put 42 up against the Titans. This week I think he could have a similar day. I think that they're going to come out blazing. I think that this is a team that when all cylinders are functioning like they were early in the season, they're one of the better offenses in football. And I think we see an elite Jaden Daniels this week.
So to just close the circle on the quarterback thing. Darren Rizzi said they're going to compete at practice, which is just funny.
Yeah.
Come on, man.
That sounds like a college coach who doesn't know. Like, neither of these guys are good enough to be the starter, but
I just think he's lying. That's my guess, that he knows.
Oh, he's trying to game Dan Quinn and say, like, you're going to have to prepare for both Jake Haener and Spencer Rattler.
I don't know. They are kind of different. You know, Rattler's a big arm player who's going to make some crazy plays. His sack rate when he played was one of the worst in NFL history if it continued, but he's more talented. We're sleeping on the big story here, though. I mean, the big story, at least in New Orleans for this game. This is the Marshawn Lattimore revenge game. This is going to be Marshawn Lattimore's
debut.
First game as a Commander.
Yep.
He's practicing fully, so I'm just assuming at this point, although you don't really know. Why are you laughing so much?
Well, if Dennis Allen was still coaching, like Sean will go over across the field, dap everybody up, they'll hug.
Well, that's true. He
might have fought DA.
Yeah, he got paid from New Orleans. It's not like he even holds animosity to the front office, but he had some issues with the coaches, and I don't know if Commanders would have made that trade if they knew he was going to be out a month. Maybe they did know he was going to be out a month, but it sort of doesn't matter in the end. They're in position to go make a playoff, and they just added a number one cornerback to their team. Now, he doesn't have anyone to cover this week.
He's going to go out there and lock up Marquez Valdez-Scantling, Greg, with Jake Haener throwing the ball.
It's funny because he got traded, and he hadn't played in a month, and we almost forget about him.
Right, because he hadn't played for 3 weeks before that for the Saints either, but he's a big-time addition, and Saints fans who have been watching Zach Bond play like an all-pro, they're just waiting they're like, oh, Sean's just going to come out there, and he's going to have 2 interceptions, and he's going to do it all. Now that I'm thinking about it more, Darren Rizzi's going to get the call from Mickey Loomis, the GM. He says, I don't care what you guys do. You know I don't bother you with the game plan or anything. It's like, you do not throw the ball at Marshawn Lattimore no matter what happens in this game. We will not be embarrassed. I don't care if we lose by 30.
Yeah, because he would do something crazy. Right. Marshawn would go in the middle of the logo, something wild.
It just hit me that, playoff situations hold. We might get Marshawn versus Mike Evans in the playoffs, depending on
5 matchup.
So, depending on some circumstances.
Yeah.
There's something to look forward to, I guess.
Washington would have to win some games.
Yeah.
One quick thing about Washington. I'm curious your thoughts. Do you believe in Washington, beyond this week? I'm talking about, like, as a contender. Like, I was just looking up Washington's numbers. 7-1 this year against teams with a losing record. 1-3 against teams with a winning record. Do we know enough about this Washington team to think, can they win a playoff game?
I think worse teams have. Like the Giants a couple of years ago, it happens. Even the like, are they close around the same level the Bucs were last year, where they could start playing better down the stretch and be a little more than the sum of their parts? Yeah, I think they could, but I don't think they're that. I don't think they're talented enough. So I think they've done a great job with what they have, and they probably fit the normal profile of a 6 or a 7 seed that won't win a game.
Yeah, a team that can beat anybody, right? Yeah. We've seen that they are good and serviceable. And let's go to a team that can also beat anybody. They can also lose to anybody. They're 16-point favorites.
Whoa, biggest
Baltimore
one of the
Ravens.
year.
Is this the biggest of the year?
That is.
Going up against
Am
Tommy
I right?
DeVito.
I'm just saying that willy-nilly, but I'm pretty sure.
I think 14.5 was as high
16
as
huge.
we've gotten.
It's huge.
The over-under is 42.5, so they think most of those points will be scored by the Baltimore Ravens. Andrew Catalon, Tiki Barber, and Jason McCourty, AJ Ross on the call. Greg, does Tommy DeVito break my heart?
No way. That's why the number moved even since this morning. Because I checked this morning, and I don't think it was that high. DeVito, like the lock to DeVito change got it moved about a point or something, I guess.
Wow. So Locke is considerably better than DeVito? From Vegas's eyes?
Vegas thinks that we think that he's not.
Yeah. I think maybe. I think he might be that much better. I don't know. Like, the vibes are going to be horrendous there with the Giants. Like, it's not a home field advantage. Baltimore's coming off a bye week. Just when Lamar made those comments when they lost to Philadelphia, how ready he was to get back to it, and maybe it's a Hard Knocks thing. I'm watching them. I'm just like, oh, they're gonna come out and they're gonna want to just put it on the Giants. They're capable of doing that, Patrick.
I would hope so. I would prefer that things are. The improvements in the pass rush have been something to feel positive about.
The Giants have no healthy offensive linemen, by the way. Like, even their backups keep getting hurt. Like, they are in a tough spot for Brian Dable. Like, no one could do well with this situation, I think, at this point.
Yeah, it's a tough ask. And the hopium that I'm taking, maybe, Cam, the relationship with Deontay Johnson is healed. Perhaps there's been hugs dished out in Owings Mills, and the offense can really get back on track because there's been some ups and downs here as of late. And also put the ball in the chest of number 22, let him get 115 and sit him down, put him on ice to get ready for the Steelers game.
Yeah, maybe by the middle of the second quarter. Over under Malik Neighbors' outbursts in this game. I feel bad for Malik because he's actually a really good player, and I think he probably feared this type of situation happening. He gets the notion of a diva receiver, but it's just been awful. It's been an awful situation for him, and I hope he gets a quarterback in April.
I hear you, and it'll be interesting to see who lines up against. The Ravens made a couple little changes before their bye, where Wiggins was playing more, Tre'Davious White was playing more, Brandon Stevens playing less. They were playing, who's that guy? Chris Board at linebacker over Trent Simpson. So I do have faith in the Ravens because they've done it year after year, that they fix what's wrong. And so that I would like to see their defense just completely dominate. I know it's not going to tell you everything, but good teams do blow out bad teams. So
this feels like an elite Ravens defense week.
Let's go. Let's go.
Starting
Let's
on
do
my
it.
fantasy team.
All right, we're going to take one more break. Oh, I know. I wish I saw that as the pickup in my league. And I was like, oh, I should have done that. We'll be back after this. Back on NFL Daily. Still haven't made a survivor pick. I checked out Commandos, and we just took them a couple weeks ago, so that was not an option. Cam, I know it's been getting a lot of buzz nationally, but Patrick and I and Steve, who's usually in that chair, we're on a streak like no other since week 3. And so we're just trying to keep it going. We got an option here. Cowboys and Panthers are both available as options. I don't personally feel comfortable taking either one of those.
We've had some discomfort here in the past couple of weeks, but have managed to survive the Dallas Cowboys in Charlotte at the Carolina Panthers, who are favored by 3. Greg has not picked them. I have not picked them this year, and this time they are favored. Joe Davis, G-Reg calling a Panthers game. Talk about vibes. Pam Oliver on the call. Cam, do you believe the Panthers get a win this week?
I do believe the Panthers get a win.
Yeah.
So much so that I would pick them in the Survivors League. I think that Bryce Young and the Panthers have been playing at least average level ball since he's come back from the benching. I know what does that mean? But like they were one of the worst teams of football. I think they've risen that level to where they give every team they've played a scare. Like they gave the Eagles a scare. They gave, who did they play the week before? That they gave
Chiefs.
a scare. The Chiefs. This is a legitimate team, and I think Bryce Young. This is one of my favorite stories of the year of how he's responded to that benching, because this is a guy who they look like they were ready to move on from him. They look like they were ready to go ahead and call it. We're going to draft a quarterback next year, and I think what he's done over the second half of the year has helped them feel like we can still build around this young quarterback. He's playing with a level of confidence he didn't play before, a level of precision. Some of the passes he was making against Philly last week were just the team listens to him. Like you could just see as they were going, even through the late huddle situations, no huddle situations, he was commanding the team. I like the Panthers this week. I think that loss the Cowboys had last week was the straw that breaks them in the fight.
Short week.
They were
on the road.
Yeah, they were holding out hope. You win that week, you can go 10-7, make a run. I don't know if there's any hopium left in Dallas.
No, I don't think so. I'm intrigued. I got to say, I think there's 2 options. We're going to get to the second one later, and we'll discuss it at that point. But they are a legitimate option. The plans kind of work. Build around a running game. That'll end up helping Bryce Young. It took a minute to get going, but it's absolutely working. We haven't mentioned on the show the results of the DeMarvion Overshawn test results, and unfortunately, he tore 3 knee ligaments, and so that's a really heartbreaking recovery that he's going to have to go through. It puts his entire 2025 in jeopardy after he missed most of his rookie season as well. So you really hope for him, and he was a great young core player for them to build around, and so that'll be tough for them to recover from. Even just on the field this week, they only have so many defensive playmakers, and he really helped Micah Parsons by being another one.
Yeah, just a rangy, athletic linebacker that can make plays in the pass game, pass rush, could do it all. A rough spot, two teams that feel like they're moving in different directions. How about two teams moving in similar directions? As the New York Jets are 3-point favorites, Greg, at the Jacksonville Jaguars. The over-under 40.5. Chris Myers, Mark Schlereth, and Jen Hale on the call. Jets lose in overtime in Florida a week ago. Losing regular time in Florida this week.
No, I would take the Jets. I don't know. This would be a next level of fraud watch.
Yeah.
The Jets have been on our fraud watch all year long. Now they are available. We could go really crazy and go with them as a survivor pick.
I'll be in that lake out there before I take the Jets.
I would never do that. Aaron Rodgers did look better last week. Thought it was his best game. Thought he moved well. They didn't punt the ball until like the fourth quarter. Fashanu looks like a good young left tackle, so they have some things that they like. Like it was the Devontae Adams you kind of expect to see. Everyone seemed like they had a little extra juice. I don't know why that is, but it's just something kind of watch. And this is a great matchup for them. So if you got Devontae and Garrett Wilson in fantasy like I do, actually I feel like they might be turning the corner at just the right time.
Yeah, I think that Jets. Yeah.
Just the
right time.
I'm just saying for me, I'm saying in fantasy that we got the playoffs. It's happening.
I have Garrett Wilson on my lineup as well, so I'm with you. I saw the Jets on Sunday against Miami. It was definitely their best offensive showing of the season. Garrett Wilson and Devontae Adams made their secondary look like substandard. I got a lot of respect for Jalen Ramsey, but Garrett Wilson had a day against him this past week. And so I think this is a team where, you start to look at this time of year, which teams are going to, pack up for Cabo and are done. I was pleasantly surprised with the Jets in their fight this past weekend. This is one of those games like the Jaguars Titans last week. I don't know who's watching except the family and friends of Jets and Jaguars, but I think the Jets have talent to win this game.
All the Netflix executives that are like, we need a Aaron Rodgers revival, before we drop Enigma. I really am now convinced, because it's going to be impossible to get Aaron Rodgers out of our lives, that now he's going to have like a kind of a sneaky good stretch run, and then some team is going to convince themselves into it. He's kind of having the classic old guy season. He just doesn't want to get hit. Yeah. But if you look at the matchups, they have maybe you can survive that way. He just doesn't want to get hit, but everything else, it's like it's okay enough if you squint.
Yeah. So which team who needs a quarterback has a good offensive line?
There's a team across town in New York, in New Jersey.
God.
They definitely don't have a good offensive line.
So why not? What about an opportunity for someone to play spoiler? Greg?
What, the Jaguars in this game?
No.
Mac Jones get a 2-game win streak and ruin their draft pick?
Jameis Winston.
Ooh.
And the Cleveland Browns going up against Patrick Mahomes and the Chiefs, who's winning all these close games. A spoiler opportunity, right?
It absolutely is, but I do not want to spoil Cam's day. He has been good with his time. I just realized he's done so many different shows, and they got him going on another one, NFL Insider, and we've been honking so much. We got to let Cam go.
Yeah, run to the next show.
Well, tell Tom, Mike, and Ian that we said hello.
I will. I will. But I had a blast here.
Yeah, we should have got you on Fantasy Live, so you literally could have been on every show.
Yeah, almost.
that we produce out here. Cam Wolfe, you see him flying around the country. He's at the big games. He's in Green Bay.
Wherever
he's in Miami. Wherever it's cold. Appreciate you. Check him out. Are you GMFB anymore this week?
Yeah, I'll be back on Thursday morning.
Check it out. Check him out Thursday morning. So yeah, you got to go get some sleep too after all this.
Yeah.
Sleep for us, Philly folks. How would we sleep if we're just going to be angry all the time? We have no time to be angry if we're sleeping.
Just Nick Sirianni's face on a pillow and just scream into it.
Nick's actually doing a really good job.
There it is. Yes. Positivity.
I sleep angry sometimes. Sometimes you just wake up in the middle of the night. You're pissed off about something.
All right, appreciate you guys.
Appreciate you, Cam.
See you, Cam. What a reporter here. One of the best to do it at NFL Network. So great having him in the studio. And yeah, this Browns game, is this the week where they finally got? That would be a great moment in this Jameis Winston hero arc. And yet I don't believe it, because watching that game last week against the Steelers, it's very Browns. Like, they do enough things well that you convince yourself they're not that far away, but actually they are really far away. Like even with Jameis Winston, they're not a good offense because they can't run the ball consistently, because in the red zone they make critical mistakes, whether it's penalties or mental errors. And then Jameis throws obviously some turnovers. Like they're not good. And the part that I wanted to get to here is like they're not a good defense either. There's this idea that they are a good defense, and maybe it's having to play with this offense, and who knows? Like, I don't know the emotions that go into it, but the stats tell you they are a below-average defense. Not one of the worst, but they're not a plus, despite having maybe the best defensive player on the planet. So it's hard to really imagine this is the week that Chiefs got.
The case would be the Kansas City Chiefs have won back-to-back 19-17 games, Greg.
Sure.
They have had to make changes at tackle because they can't protect one of the best quarterbacks to ever play the game. And again, they're only scoring 19 points where that's only a couple of plays from, and again, the defensive side of the ball, the past couple of weeks, they've made some tackles, but they did have a rough stretch there where they gave up 30 plus points to the Buffalo Bills, then 27, I believe, to the Carolina Panthers. And I just don't know how to feel about this Chiefs team at this point.
I don't feel great, but I'm just not going to learn that much this week, I don't think. They need to blitz, which I think is a problem for them because they just don't have the talent in the back end to hold up, and yet they're not getting the pressure. But again, I don't think that's going to necessarily haunt them against the Browns. The Chiefs, speaking of average defenses, are down to 15th in defensive DVOA. And if you think about how high they were after 5 or 6 weeks, they were top 5, I believe. Do the math. That's the kind of the level that they've been at. I saw this clip, and I'm going to take advantage of watching in-season Hard Knocks. I felt like it was kind of like homework, but it's good homework. It's like doing my notes for this show while I was on. My I'm not going to say criticism, but my game plan of watching that show is it's better before the games start, actually. Okay. I think like the first 30 minutes of each episode is really excellent and some of the best Hard Knocks. Once the game starts, there are really cool moments, but it's less compelling. Like if it was just that first 30 minutes, it's fantastic television. Either way, part of that 30 minutes was Myles Garrett talking to the rest of the defensive line room and Shelby Harris just kind of like, hey man, I know we're out of it, but just like you got to find something that you really care about and play for in this last stretch. And I get it. Like you do have to say that, and it is all true. And those are the Shelby Harrises of the world find that. Mm-hmm. But does the whole team find that? It just made me think it's just like it is tough for them to win a game against the Kansas City Chiefs. That's how I feel.
This is it. This is that thing for your games to matter late in the season. That's why spoilers are so fun. And if the Arizona Cardinals were playing better, yes, Greg, the New England Patriots would have an opportunity here. The Cardinals still favored by 6 against your squad led by Drake May. 46, the over-under, Tom McCarthy, Jay Feely, and Ross Tucker on the call along with Amanda Balionis, where Kyler and the Birds have been struggling. As of late, do they fix things against the Pats?
Yeah, I think they will. I think this is a great option for our survivor. In fact, I think the two options are Cardinals and Panthers. I just don't think the Patriots defense is trustworthy enough in a matchup against an offensive staff that, yeah, it's gotten a little stagnant lately, but they throw a lot at you, and this Patriots defense has been one that it's not physically talented, but it makes a lot of mental mistakes and gives up big plays. And so I have a hard time seeing the Patriots win over 4 quarters, but it's getting to the point where it's very scary to pick against Drake May because we are extremely lucky that we survived 2 weeks ago against them.
Very, very lucky in a team that was kind of in a similar run in the Indianapolis Colts to where the Cardinals are now.
All right, maybe you're okay.
I'm not. I'm actually looking at the last game on the board here as my option for
let's
pick.
Put a pin in that. We'll hold this discussion.
We'll come to that later, but it's 2 inconsistent teams where we've seen great highs. But I believe in the Cardinals a whole lot more than the Patriots here. 6 points might feel like a bit much.
Yeah, that feels too much. And even just thinking about that Colts-Patriots game again, it makes me hesitate because that was by far the Patriots' best offensive performance of the year. I'd almost go to say it was their best game of the year, even though they didn't win.
Yeah.
They just looked like the better team. They outgained the other team by 130 yards. They were really confident. And the thing I love about Drake May right now is how different he is than he was advertised to be. He is not a up and down Josh Allen in his rookie year type of quarterback. He's actually taking what's given. He's not throwing the ball down the field. He's making good decisions. He's like changing protections. I'm trying not to be biased because I know he's on the Patriots.
You're not.
I think he's playing quarterback better than the other rookie quarterbacks. Jaden is a better pick for offensive rookie of the year because he's been more productive and he's done more. But I just think he's playing at a better, more composed level that makes you really excited about what's going to come when other better players are with him. That's all. It's gotten better each and every week. Can that continue? I almost think it's too good to be true.
It's like one of those coach of the year situations where you're evaluating it based on who's doing the most with the least around them, and it'd be difficult to argue, right? Maybe Caleb could make the case, but for Jaden and for Bo Nix, right? There's a lot surrounding them. For Drake May, he doesn't necessarily have all of those advantages. Speaking of the number one overall.
Actually, I want to ask you a question.
Oh, ask me a question.
Not to cut you off.
No, don't. You never do.
Fantasy playoffs. I've been right into I'm very good in terms of total points scored, but I got Kyler here. Do I flip it up, or am I getting too cute to go Kyler against the Patriots?
I don't think it's cute because there was that huge stretch where Kyler was carrying you.
Exactly.
We didn't have
exactly.
And so there's so many people making decisions where I think that was the theme on our show today. You dance with the one that brung you. And if somebody helped get you here, both of those guys instrumental in that. I don't think you could go necessarily wrong either way. Kyler's matchup is better.
I'm leaning Kyler because I'm trying not to just go with what's been happening. I'm trying to go with the matchup, and I can just totally imagine Kyler in a game they need to win having about 65 yards rushing and a rushing touchdown and a nice passing day, and we move on.
Yeah,
thank you. I just needed that.
No,
I've been
no problem.
Thinking about it a lot.
Everybody always asks everybody else for fantasy advice, so I'm glad. I think we could hit over 100 rushing yards by both quarterbacks combined.
Yeah.
In that game. So let's go to Caleb Williams on Monday Night Football. We got a Monday night doubleheader. The Bears at the Minnesota Vikings, fresh off of their big win a week ago against Atlanta. 6.5 points they are favored by. 43.5 is the over-under. It's the Joe, Troy, and Lisa half of Monday Night Football as this Vikings team, we saw them lose 2 games in a row several weeks ago. Oh, my gosh, it's over. They've done nothing but win since, Greg.
It's crazy how balanced they are. Aaron Jones finally got going again last week, ran really well. That was important for me to see because I think they're going to need him to be great to win a bunch of playoff games, and they might on the road, which is what they might have to do. I thought KOC had one of his best games a week ago. He just creates confusion in what the defense is going to have to do to match what he's doing week after week, and then the talent that Sam Darnold has brought out in Justin Jefferson and Jordan Addison. Like, it's just 6.5 is not enough for me here. I think what Cam talked about of the Cowboys, like that they kind of ran out of their juice. Maybe the Bears have one week where they pop up, and maybe it's not all bad. Maybe Caleb has a good game, but like both sides are not going to be good in this game, and both sides are going to need to play their best game to me to even be in this game in the fourth quarter. If even one side, like the Bears defense, shows up like they looked like a week ago, they're going to get blown out. If both sides do, it'll just be crazy.
When the Bears offense was resurgent this year, they were able to run the ball, but they've got the fewest yards after contact per carry in the entire league right now. And then
that's a DeAndre Swift stat, unfortunately.
But also the offensive line isn't providing a lot of opportunity for DeAndre Swift to get yards as of late. And here's Brian Flores' defense still stopping the run at one of the highest rates in the league. It's tough to envision anything other than more than 6.5 points.
Caleb, if I could ask for him to do one thing down the stretch, it would take more chances. A little bit what we talked about with Jalen Hurts. Like that touchdown interception ratio is awesome for Caleb, but he has the second highest pressure to sack rate in the league to Will Levis, and it's been going up and up. Last week was kind of the bottoming out of it. 7 sacks on only 11 pressures. Now I watched that game. 3 of them were quite quick. Like he wasn't going to do much, but he is holding onto the ball. I think just to take some chances. It's easy for me to say because it'll wind up with some interceptions, and that's hard to deal with, but I think it would be good for his development. He maybe is almost playing a little too safe.
Yeah, you're not going to lose your job, Caleb. And we've seen it where these first halves have been miserable for the Bears offense.
Right.
They get behind, and Caleb feels like, okay, I have to try to make a play now. You making plays is why you were the number 1 overall pick. We don't want safety, Caleb. We want the guy going out there doing fun stuff because that's what we enjoy. Also fun, revenge game opportunities, Greg. Monday Night Football, the Atlanta Falcons on the road where they are a 4-point favorite, potentially playing against the quarterback that they put to the curb last year, Desmond Ridder, with a revenge game. The over-under is 44. Chris Fowler, Louis Riddick, Dan Orlovsky, and Laura Rutledge on the call. I would like this as the survivor.
No, I'm gonna.
You hate it.
I hate it.
You hate it so. We're gonna have to work back through.
There's no way I'm taking the Atlanta Falcons as my survivor pick in the year 2024.
Against either Desmond Ridder or a hurt Aiden O'Connell. He was carted off the field, Greg.
Yeah, but hey, we got the Turneye, the Scott and North Turner. They're kind of getting it done. It's like my most shameful take is Scott Turner's underrated. And I actually think they've been doing some good things offensively. They've been moving the ball. And it's probably, if it's Desmond Ridder, I still don't want to take it, but it makes more sense to me. If it's Aiden O'Connell, I might take the Raiders straight up. Just
okay.
end this season for the Falcons. I do not trust this Falcons team, and the Raiders are in all these games. They're actually kind of a competitive football team, and they probably will lose. But it's more about that anything that can go wrong with the Falcons is going wrong, and so I feel way better about the Cardinals or the Panthers. You know what? I think in the spirit of our enjoyment of what's been happening with Bryce Young, maybe that's the move. Be a little bold. We take. I think we can agree on that.
Yeah, I would rather lose with love.
Okay.
Than to sheepishly win, and we have skated by the skin of our teeth. It's been fun to track, so let's continue having fun. You know, damn the torpedoes, Greg.
How about the symmetry of? We pick the game straight up every single week. Neither of us have chosen the Carolina Panthers to win one single time. But the first time we take them to win, they're our survivor pick. That's how much we believe in them. I do believe in them. I think they'll cover the 3. That's what I'll be picking. I think they're going to win that game. Should we give the Falcons any more time? Because they are in the mix here. They're
very much in the. If the Chargers beat the Buccaneers, the Falcons can win this game and be right back in it.
They're tied. They're literally in first place. They're favored to win this game. The Bucs are favored to lose their game. And here's another very mild take. I understand keeping Kirk Cousins as your quarterback this week. I think this is the last week if it didn't go well. But he did so many really good things in that game last week that I just don't think people who didn't watch every snap of that game saw that. I want to stick with him one more week. I thought he played quite well throughout that game, except for the 2 interceptions. I know that's a big except.
No,
but like next level, good throws down the field, good decisions, like tough plays, and the contract is part of it. I just think it makes sense to make sure you're out of it first. Maybe a bolder coach would feel differently.
Yeah, there's only so many chances you have to win your division. I think, and it hinges on how the first 3 quarters of this game go. If it's close, late, maybe you make a decision like, hey, perhaps we have a better chance short-term and long-term with Michael Penix Jr.
And the defense, I thought, for 3 quarters was like, okay, they're getting pressure on Darnold. They didn't quite finish those plays, and, the roof caved in on them, and it didn't end up being a great game. But I see the vision. They could still make it happen. I think the ceiling, as crazy as it is higher with Kirk Cousins. Ceiling always high with you, buddy. We do it. We do it twice a week here on NFL Daily with Patrick Claybon, but man, we do it all over the week in general. We got that extra show coming, so check your feeds out. My buddy Anthony Jeselnik and I and Colleen Wolfe are going to be in your feed on Thursday before the TNF recap, which will be with Andrew Siciliano. I mean, when we're rolling out stars each and every day, football, it's finally back.